Okay, so I've had a lot of students have questions about this specific question on the review, so I'm going to go over it really quickly. Physical traits aren't the only way to build phylogenetic trees. You can also use DNA to determine how species are related. You have three species of butterfly: pipevine swallowtail, giant swallowtail, and the tiger swallowtail. Your roommate is in a genetics lab and sequences the DNA of a barcoding gene, which is a highly conserved genetic sequence. And conserved here means that it's not going to change very much it's not going to change often, rather. That genetic sequence over time is going to remain the same. So, a highly conserved genetic sequence that differs between species but is the same within species. You focus on just the first three base pairs in the sequence because this is where you observe differences between species. Select the best answer for each question. Some answers may be used more than once and some not at all. And so, what we're talking about here with these positions are the position of the nucleotide base. These are all like the same in a long chain of DNA. If you were to kind of count out where that was, these would all be in that same exact position. So, um, adenine, cytosine, and guanine are the different nucleotides for this first one. And I'm just going to abbreviate ACA as the second one and ACA as the third one. And so these are all the same positions, but they're the DNA from different species. The nucleotides from a long chain of DNA in different species. And so now we're first asked, which species is the giant swallowtail most closely related to? And so we see that the giant swallowtail has, if we think about this just as you would a trait, we don't see any differences in these nucleotides, but we do see a difference in the position 3 between the giant swallowtail and the pipevine swallowtail. So therefore, we know that these two are going to be more closely related. So the giant swallowtail and the tiger swallowtail are more closely related. So we're going to put that here, the tiger swallowtail. And then next, given that the most recent common ancestor to this group has a G at positions 2 and 3, please complete the phylogenetic tree for these species. So now they're saying we have a most recent common ancestor. So that's another species that is not on the list. So we can even just make up a name for that to make it easier. That's going to be the pink swallowtail, okay? And so then at its position number 1, we know that it has an A because it's the same, because it's not saying that it's different. At position number 2, we have a G, and at position number 3, we have a G. So that is our nucleotide sequence for this new species that we're talking about that is the common ancestor to all three of these species. And so now the next part is species A is what? Species B is what? Species C is what? For on this phylogenetic tree. So we know that the pink swallowtail that I just made up the name for is an ancestor to all of these. So time on phylogenetic trees moves upward. So this was um, longer ago, and this was more recent time up here. So my ancestral species is going to go down here, and that has AGG. And so if we look back up here, we want to see how many differences there are between this ancestral sequence and these three. And so if I were to put that up here, just to make it a little bit easier to see, I can see that there are two differences between these last two, right? But only one difference between the pipevine swallowtail. So the pipevine swallowtail is species A. And then as we move on, we can see that these two would be then the following species after that. So we can just put the giant swallowtail here and the tiger swallowtail there, because we know that they are different. So to them, the pipevine swallowtail is a more ancestral species, and they have the same nucleotide sequence, so they can just go on the end. And so then we're looking at the trait changes, which we know the trait changes are these nucleotide sequence changes. So we know that trait change 1 happened with our pipevine swallowtail, and that trait change 2 happened with our giant swallowtail and the tiger swallowtail. So then we can say that the change that happened between our ancestor and the pipevine swallowtail up here was that we had position 2 change from a G to a C. Okay, so our trait change 1 was G to C at position 2. And then we're looking down here and we're seeing, well, what's changed then between our pipevine swallowtail and the rest of these two. And so what we can see there is that we've had a change from guanine to adenine in position 3. So this is G to A at position 3.